What is the Communist Party's position on social programs?
We think that social programs have been severely eroded over the last 30 years as a result of austerity and the combination of liberal and conservative governments delivering austerity. We point out that expanding social programs will meet the needs of Canadians for services. It also is a way to create jobs. So, for example, a national child care program that is public and that is free for children will create a lot of jobs in the construction of child care centers and in employing child care workers who will be adequately trained and have their ECE certifications and so on, and should be properly paid, by the way. Why is that important? Because women work in this country, and if they're not working, they're looking for work. And we have a social responsibility to make sure that our children are safely cared for while we're at work. That's a social responsibility. The Liberals promised in 1993 in their little famous red book that they were going to deliver a system like that. Well, that's more than 25 years ago now, and they're not even talking about it in this election. The time has come. We need a national child care program, a pan-Canadian child care program that's quality and that's public and that's free. We also want to see Medicare expanded, and of course I'm sure your viewers will be quite familiar with the fact that Medicare is under attack in this country. Certainly by the conservatives, who speak for, more often than not, for the big box U.S. Healthcare corporations, and by the Liberals, who seem to be absolutely blind to incursions of privatization of services and fees that are being charged. They're also facing a court case now here in British Columbia over the single-payer system. And a clinic in Vancouver that wants to be able to, charge their services to healthcare corporations, insurance companies, and so on. So we want to see enforcement of the Canada Health Act. We have one system, a single-payer system that's universal, and we cut out the private for-profit, gluttons, I can say, who want to take advantage of people who are ill. And we want to expand Medicare. It should include dental care, should include vision care, mental health care, long-term care, and it should include pharmacare. Pharmacare is a bit of an issue in this election, thanks to the Liberals and the NDP, but I think it's important to say that what the Liberals are proposing is not pharmacare. What they've actually said is that they are thinking about, maybe sometime in the future, hopefully not 25 years from now, but what they're proposing we don't want anyway. And what it is not to include pharmacare within Medicare, but to simply cover with public insurance people who aren't already covered by private insurance. And that's not Medicare, that's a patchwork such as exists in the United States. It just makes public insurance, so the single-payer system, one part of a private insurers, and we don't want that. We want Medicare to be inclusive of pharmacare. We also think that we should nationalize the pharmaceutical companies, which have been profiteering on the backs of Canadians for a very long time. So this is important. We are unclear what the NDP's policy is. It would be useful if they would clarify what they're actually proposing. And we invite them to steal our policy on Medicare, that it should be completely inclusive of all of these services, including pharmaceuticals. And finally, on education, which is the other big one. Students are being asked to pay virtually the full cost of education, post-secondary students. So whether they're at university or colleges, they're being absolutely hosed. And to gain entrance to university these days, you either have to have parents with very deep pockets or be willing to take on a debt the size of a small mortgage when you graduate. And it's very unfair, and And it doesn't make sense. We hear all the time about how the world of work is changing, how we need to have a highly educated workforce in Canada, etc. So why wouldn't we invest in that? We say we should invest in it. And the payback is enormous. It's a highly educated workforce. It will put Canada, in the top runnings internationally. And so how do you do that? Well, you eliminate tuition fees for students. You make post-secondary education, access to it simply based on students' interest and on their marks. If they have the marks, they should get in. We should eliminate, write off all existing student debts. And we should pay students a stipend so to cover their living costs while they're studying. This is a very important investment. And the things that we are campaigning for that I've just spoken about, people say, well, how will you pay for that? And so the answer is pretty straightforward. We want to use some of that military spending, that bloated, very dangerous military spending should be spent on health, education, social programs, child care, pay and employment equity, all these things. A higher minimum wage, I don't think I mentioned. We want to see $20 minimum wage. That's one of the ways to raise wages. We want to also raise pensions substantially and to make them fully accessible at age 60, not partially, but fully. A guaranteed annual living wage to put a floor under everybody. These are the ways to make life livable and with dignity. So in addition to military spending, we also want to increase the tax load on big corporations. It used to be in the post-war period that every tax dollar, 50 cents came from corporations and 50 cents came from individuals. Now it's about 95 cents from individuals and about 5 cents from corporations. So we have, as tax experts will tell you, who aren't in the pockets of the corporations, but the ones at universities will tell you, we have virtually a flat tax situation here in Canada. So we need a progressive tax system that will put the load on those most able to pay, and that's the corporations. And we should reverse all of these tax cuts. We should and close the tax loopholes, require them to pay their deferred and unpaid corporate taxes. We should bring back the capital tax. We should make capital gains tax taxable at 100% of the gain. We should introduce wealth and inheritance taxes. Everybody knows about the 1%. Well, let's do something about that. And I think the NDP's demands around wealth taxes are very, very modest. We could do much more than that, and we should. They can afford to pay, and they should pay. In the 50s and 60s, corporations paid, the corporate tax rate was 70–80%. And the economy was booming, and people were working. And life was pretty good. So it wasn't those taxes that made them go away. And we need to, we're proposing a 30% corporate tax rate. And why should we have that money? For education, for health care, for social programs, for properly financing the health and education of Indigenous people, and settling land claims fairly and justly, and a lot more.